Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay this morning. I was having a few technical difficulties, which very often happens out here, as you're all aware. Obviously, living in a shed, signal can be a little shoddy. So today we're actually going to be going live with the amazing Phallus and his partner, and we're actually going to be going live from their business page, The Lucky Bones, where they ethically source bones and art and clay products to create the beautiful works of art that they will show us later in this live. So right now, I'm just waiting for them to join in. I've just been messaging them, letting them know that I had a slight delay this morning and that we are now going live. So as soon as they join into this live, I'm going to be letting them jump straight onto the stream with us. They are currently in the process of multitasking and cooking food, but as we all know, these couch talks are very, very impromptu, unprofessional, but at the same time professional as well, because, well, this is life and this is what happens. These things happen and you can't rush perfection. So as soon as they join in, I'm going to be introducing them and letting them introduce themselves for all of you and letting them tell their story. But these beautiful souls, they live on the road. They've got these gorgeous animals, which they will be introducing during the live. And I'm looking so forward, I'm so excited, sorry, terrible English, to find out what they've got on their books, what their plans are, and what they wish to be doing with their future. So as soon as they join in, it's going to be exciting. Good morning, Anne Phillip. Hope you're well. Just setting up my Bluetooth keyboard as well, so that way I can respond to anybody that's talking into the chat, and that way I don't have to call out in the live and cut people off. And that was actually a recommendation from my beautiful friend Judith, because ADHD, my brain doesn't think sometimes, and I can often be like, hey, and cut people off in my lives, and I feel really, really guilty for that at times. But that happens, and I'm still getting on top of it and learning how to cope. Good morning, darling. Good morning, Dakota. I hope you're both well. All right, now I'm just tagging the beautiful business page of these beautiful souls in here. Yes, technically, because I think you're in England. Correct me if I'm wrong, Anne. I hope you'll have. Oh wow, definitely very late for you. It's amazing and incredible that you are here to see me live. Oh, and the beautiful people have just joined, so I'm going to send them through an invite to join this stream. I am so excited for this. Oh no, it's not letting me invite them. Good morning, Dan. Hope you are well. Alright, can I get you guys to request to join my live so that I can get your request through and put you in? And fortunately, if this doesn't work, I might have to get you to jump on your private profiles and join in through that. So bear with us, everybody, in this live while we get this going. As we all know, I am not the best when it comes to tech. But again, like I said at the beginning of this live, this is all about real life, and these things happen. And you know what? The more I experience these issues, the more you guys will be able to understand how the lives work. And if you plan to go live yourself, you know the hiccups that you may potentially face. And that goes the same with the beautiful people from the Lucky Bones, which is their business page, so that they know in future that, well, this potentially might be a thing that happens, which is why I believe I set my profile up to be an independent instead of as a business. Because sometimes business profiles do run into these issues, as I've noticed on Instagram lives. Okay. No, unfortunately, it's not letting me invite your business into the live stream, so I might have to get you both to jump onto your private profiles and then join in from there, or join in from one of your profiles. I really don't mind at all. But as soon as you guys are in, hello, you enchanted dear. It's good to see you. I hope that you've been doing well. And as soon as I've gone live with my beautiful souls that I'm going to be talking to, I'll be responding to everybody with my keyboard that I've set up. Oh, there we go. It's working. It has come through, and they should be joining me in this stream very shortly. There we go. Hello, how are you both?
Oh, hi, good. I'm glad that you can see us now.
I'm so glad it was working. I'm not sure what was happening because I was able to send a request to everybody but you guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no clue why that would happen. So I just had to use my phone. Oh, we were going to use my laptop, but here we are.
Maybe
Nice.
that could be why, because the PC version of Instagram, unfortunately, is very limited.
Yeah, I don't use it that much. I just thought it would be a little bit easier, but it's no big deal.
But yeah, so I'm going to give you guys the space so that you can introduce yourselves, introduce who you are, your names, what you do. So I'm just going to give this floor to you right now, and I'm going to get my little questionnaires open so that once you've introduced yourselves, I can start asking you some questions.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody that's here. I'm Isaac from the Lucky Bones, and this is,
I'm Soren from the Lucky Bones.
and yeah, that's just our little business. Just
So
the two of us.
whereabouts in the world are you guys actually coming from? Because as most of my community know, I interact with people on a global base, and obviously they don't know who you are or what you do. Where are you actually calling from? What's the time where you are?
So we're in Providence, Rhode Island, U.S., and it's currently it's 7:48 right now, p.m.
Yep,
on Sunday, and we learned that you're in the future,
I
which
am. I think I'm 14 hours in front of you, I believe.
yep, yep. It was very interesting trying to set up a video chat with someone in Australia, I tell you. Uh,
It it does.
but
It
now
does.
we know.
The amount of times I get confused with the time zones, and I've made that mistake myself. Like I quite literally made that mistake last week going live with my friend in England. I got ready
Mhm.
at 7 a.m. in the morning. Turns out that I should have been getting ready at 7 p.m.
Yep. Yeah, we've got friends in London too, and it's always a bit confusing. And it's like we should know by now, but we never quite catch on. We're like, oh,
No,
it's
you
all
never quite
new.
do. And I think that's the
Sure.
blessing thing about being in Australia is I'm in the middle of both you guys in America and everyone in England, so I can kind of start my day sorting everything out as I figured out this morning, and then spend the rest of the afternoon getting what I need done.
Mhm. And
So I'm
anyway,
going to start off with the questionnaire on why the Lucky Bones? Why the name? Explain the business.
well, so it started in 2021, in January of last year. We decided to take off from normal life, I guess, and we just kind of dropped everything, got a cheap, crappy old RV, and
Yep.
just went across the country. We made a few stops We stayed the longest in Texas, and then went to California, and then came all the way back to the East Coast. And during that time, we constantly felt we were constantly remarking how fortunate we were to even be alive, because at times it got so hard to live that life, as you well know, that
As
it
I definitely know, like I remember at one instance you were living very much like I do, off grid, and you had a very, very big issues and sources with water.
we had
Yeah.
no running water on this property in the middle of nowhere in Texas.
We were promised it did have water. But
Yeah, we someone we trusted set us up with the property, and it turned out to be kind of all a sham, really. And there was
Yeah,
not.
and they kind of, if I remember correctly, expected you to fix it all.
yeah, promised us water, pretty much was like pumped up the property, said it was really awesome. We could do pretty much anything we wanted.
It was all smoke and mirrors,
And
basically, to get us there.
we got there,
But
and as we're driving onto said property, he goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, so we gotta lay low for the first few months because the real owner of the property doesn't know we're here."
in Texas,
No.
dude, on
Texas,
site.
Texas in
That
America. So the water he promised us that was there were two algae contaminated containers. One was
oh god.
contaminated with red algae, which means you can no longer use
No,
it for
no,
any.
you can't. That's so toxic.
And he decided that he was going to pressure, like power wash
And it would
one
be
of
fine. It
them
would be
with
fine.
bleach,
We,
and that it would be fine. So he power washed the green one because we refused to let him do the red one. And then he decided to get a bunch of hose water and just
and gave it.
treat
He
it
basically
treat it
treated
with
it.
bleach, and then was like, "Here's your
He's
water."
like, here's a couple buckets. See you in 6 months.
I remember that because you guys reached out to me and I was teaching you just methods of catching water.
Yeah, we had no
Yeah,
idea. We went.
trying and failing because these storms in Texas are very windy. So every attempt we made to put a parking system or any sort of water catch
Yeah,
got
everything
ripped right out
blew
of the
down.
ground.
Yeah, it was
That
a
wow,
wild.
I remember that moment because that's I think when we really connected properly as well was in that moment when I realized that you guys were struggling so hard living in an environment that is almost identical to what I live in, but I had the protection of the trees which prevented all of that wind that you guys had to deal with, and you were on an open plateau essentially.
It was a big, wide open field.
Yeah, it was a big wide field and
Um,
like 7 acres of land.
so it wasn't really all
About
that.
what I own.
Yeah, it's not all that much. If there's not that much forest, you could see the neighbors, and they weren't supposed to know that we were there. So it was very dangerous to be there. Just being, in America today,
No,
and
no
And being in
toilets,
America,
being in
especially
toilets, no
as
America,
well.
showers, no
Yeah,
modern.
and with you guys being non-binary as well, being in Texas, that would have been very, very like care to explain that. Like, feel free to explain that. Like, being
They would have
non-binary
thought
in America, how does that work?
we were terrified all the time. That's how that worked. We
Yeah,
just basically had to. Um, I'm non-binary still. I identify as non-binary, but I choose to pass as much as I can as male because of the state of things here. It's just not safe. It's safer than I'm certain some places in the world, obviously, but it's still like you get to somewhere like Texas in the United States, and it's like a different
Texas
world.
is very, like, correct me if I'm wrong, very gun happy, aren't they?
it
Very
is
gun happy.
incredibly hostile. It's essentially a hostile environment at all times.
That's so scary because coming from Australia, like we don't have gun. Well, obviously we have guns. My neighbors have guns because well, we have wild dogs are quite an issue where I live.
Right.
Believe it or not, we do actually have carnivores here in Australia.
Don't say.
just not like your carnivores. When you guys talk about us and you're like, oh my God, Australia is so dangerous and scary, I'm sitting here going, you
No.
have cougars, you have wolves, we have a spider.
I would rather fight a big scary spider than a Texan with a gun. Just saying.
Same,
We're ordering
same.
the wild boars down there. Honestly, you have to fear the pigs the most.
The pig.
Oh
The
yeah,
pigs
and
are just the
cows.
most aggressive animal down there.
cows. Have you ever dealt with a wild cow?
Oh,
No,
a wild
Oh
but
cow.
God,
they're
they're
ornery
just as
though.
dangerous.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't want a, I mean, I guess a bull. You don't want to mess with in
I
general.
think we heard pigs one night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
That
got
would have
the
been terrifying.
yeah, we do have a boar skull that's actually on the shop site
Yep.
that
Oh,
has
you
wonderful
should go grab
protection
that
skull.
while I quickly go and grab the skulls that we're going to be discussing
Yeah,
in one
yeah.
second because
Talk
I
about
forgot to grab them.
skulls.
So go grab yourself some art project. I'm going to grab mine. So excuse me for one quick second, and then I'm
Yep.
going to ask some questions about that.
All right. I'll be here. Hi, everybody.
So
We're
feel
waiting on.
free to share
Yep.
more of your story about how you ethically source them while I go
Right.
and gather my bones.
That's a good. Yes. So, we just went scavenging. Really, like we didn't really have a whole lot to do in our downtime, other than like gather water and make sure that we were fed and clean and the dogs were safe. Other than that, you just walk around in the woods, don't you? Just kind of walk around in nature and get to know your surroundings. And as we were doing that, we noticed that because Texas is so arid, as opposed to like maybe other places in the United States, like the East Coast where we're from, there were just bones lying around everywhere. And I wonder if that's the case in Australia. When I picture Australia, I picture like a lot of like I picture a lot of skeletons flying around for some reason. I don't know why, but we'd never experienced that. So we ended up finding, roadkill and things that deer, a lot of deer and boar, and like foxes and wild cats and things. And we just thought they were beautiful because, I mean, well, aren't they? They're just they're kind of a testament to, in my mind, endurance. Who knows what these animals went through to end up where they ended up, and yet here still is a piece of them, and I think that's quite beautiful. And I think that we were very lucky, in fact, to find them and be able to turn them into art and honor them that way.
Beautiful. And I do have one question in regards to that as well. Because obviously, if you're sourcing bones, and we're part of the large metaphysical community in that, what is your belief on the metaphysical attributes to the bones that you gather? Is that half the reason why you gather them ethically and source them ethically and treat them in such a way as well?
Of course.
Yeah, because they take on the energy of the worker, the person who handles them and turns them into that artwork. It has an energy of its own, just kind of sitting there, absorbing it
They
from
do,
nature.
like the
Just by
fox, you mentioned fox and cats as well. And
Yep.
the fox energy is so cunning, but at the same time so smart. When you create the piece of work with the fox and the cat, because both the cat and the fox are part of the very much the same energy, do you incorporate that into how you create the art projects? Do you incorporate that in how you weave or paint? Like, do you put symbolisms of the metaphysical energy onto the bones as well?
I
Of
do
course.
actually.
Absolutely.
One of my best sellers, I sold pretty much right away, was a fox skull, in fact. And I handcrafted clay mushrooms to kind of be growing out of it as kind of a symbolizing.
The nose, but it's still, I mean, like the boar. Let's look at the boar for instance.
That boar is absolutely, oh my God, that is absolutely stunning now that
It's
I'm
like
getting a better look at that.
it's really like solid piece of skull, and this
I've
we
never
found
seen a
like
boar skull
really.
before because the skull that I've actually got I've got two skulls. One's actually a goat. And you
Ah,
guys would be very familiar with goats because I remember talking to you guys a couple of times, and that's going to be a question that we'll ask later. But
yes,
so I've got a little goat here. So this was about 8 to 9 months old. I believe Ankara. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the breed of goat? Angora.
Angora goat.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of goats that you would have in Australia. What we worked with were like Nubians and Alpine mostly.
Because that's definitely it. But this is the goat skull that I've got, and I'm going to be asking for your advice on how I should be working with this. And obviously, I've got another one here. So this is actually a sheep skull that I've already started working on, and I got it gifted to me by a friend.
Beautiful. Oh, I
So
love it.
I'm going to be
Love it.
doing some pieces on this. But feel free to walk me through what I should be doing to help, such as the teeth, structurally integritize it. Like, what should I be working on? Should I be using resin? Do I paint? How should I be doing this? Because when I work with bones, I do a lot of foot dark and I do a lot of small things. This will be the first time I'm working on something like this. Oh,
So
wow.
you've
What is
already.
that?
Oh, that's a boar also. That's a female. The other one is a male.
Okay.
So this one's
Yeah.
smaller. The other one, what I was pointing to earlier, I'll get right to what you just asked. But there's a bullet hole going back to Texas. This was found in Texas with a bullet hole right dead
Straight
center.
to the head. Isn't that meant to be like the
It is
hardest part?
blasted right through the back here. See how thick that skull is?
That's what I thought, because they're meant to pretty much, correct me if I'm wrong, ricochet a lot of bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't shoot them dead the first time,
Just
you
pray.
better run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what was I saying then?
Oh, to work with the bone.
To work with
To work
something
with the
like
bones
that.
to help get these teeth, as you can see, these teeth are very
So what
moving.
you can do is pop them right on out.
Pop
Honestly,
them out and glue them back in.
yeah, pop them out,
Oh,
clean
really?
them up.
So if I was to,
They sound a little. I can tell how they sound. They sound a little dry and dusty.
they
Maybe.
do, yeah.
So I bet you there's some dust and dirt in there, just naturally, and that's okay. Just try to
Actually,
brush
they
it away.
don't want to pull out. They're actually rather hard to pull out. I'm a little scared in case I break it.
Like you would if you were losing a tooth. Just wiggle it right on out. It should come out. And
They're kind of like a puzzle piece too. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, I always like to stick the tip of a glue inside the teeth and just kind of glue it like that and then jam them in.
Yeah, because they kind of don't really want to actually come out. They're actually, as you can see, they're actually rather solidly in there.
When they're like that, sometimes they'll be good. Honestly, if you're not going to be bashing it around too much, don't worry about it.
No, because they're mainly, what we create these things is mainly to be ornamental or used in metaphysical practices. And going on with that, how would one incorporate the art projects that you've got, obviously with the symbolisms and the creatures behind it? How would someone use that in their metaphysical approaches? Because what we know is most of our client bases may not even follow the same practices that we do, but we incorporate our practices for them. How would they use your products in their own practices?
So a lot of our things they can
Oh,
be
that's gorgeous. Is that nice and good?
Spiritual practice. We're very non-secular. I identify as Luciferian personally, so I do a lot of shadow work, with some light conjuring here and there.
Feel free to explain that, because nobody in this live and anybody watching, there's no judgment at all. Like, go straight into full details. I'd love to hear about it, because I don't do conjuring myself, because as you know, I'm a traveler, I'm a gypsy. I do a lot of energy, plant-based medicine work, which is very, very different to what you do.
I wouldn't even say that it's all that different, is it? I think
not really, no, actually. It's very much like my friends explained it perfectly. A gypsy works with chaos magic. We work with things that are completely out of control, and we bring the reality to it.
I just finally cracked into my copy of Libernal because I'm trying to understand chaos magic, and I feel like it's almost not meant to be understood. And that's the point.
It's never meant to be understood. It's just meant to be worked with. You work with it because it's just the energy, and you adapt with it.
I love it. I'm a fan. But anyway, well, I'm sure we could get into a whole other video just based on magical and spiritual practices.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But going back to how does one incorporate your tools into their metaphysical approaches?
So let's find something here. So what I've got here, for instance, divination. This is a pendulum, right? What kind of stone is this?
Rainbow moonstone with black tourmaline.
Okay, and a nice.
I was about to say it looked like it had tourmaline fractures in it.
An antique silver chain, and then we've got a ring-tailed cat scapula bone, which is the shoulder blade of a small cat-like creature that we found in Texas, and it's just simply sealed and painted black and sealed again, and it is now. You can't hold it in your fingers right now, but if you were to hold it, it's perfectly fit, like even the grooves in the scapula itself in this size fit the thumb and the main fingers.
That's
Just
actually
just so
beautiful.
perfect. What
All
do you
of
have?
my art projects are actually created to be pendulums as well and
Oh,
perfectly
great.
balanced.
Isn't that great?
I also do things like sun catchers with the flower of life symbol on them to incorporate sort of
That almost
spirit.
looks like a squirrel.
This is a mink skull, actually.
Oh,
Mink
wow.
face. There we go.
Plenty of little weasels over here.
And this got turned into a sun catcher, which is perfect to just hang into your altar room.
Yeah, a
And just the
meditation
rainbows
space.
passing over your crystals and in your life and in your daily
That's
activities comes
absolutely
along
stunning. Now,
lighthearted.
I do have another question in regards to your bones. So, if you were to say, send bones to me in Australia or to clients and customers across the ocean, how do customs and that work with your products? Like, what do you have to do in order to send things internationally in case anybody watching this live is interested in getting your artworks?
So as far as I'm aware, and this might be a little bit naughty, I'm not sure. There isn't really too many restrictions regarding bone, because as soon as you do what you do, like to them, that makes no sense at all. As soon as this is
You
done,
steal them essentially and paint them?
it becomes art. It becomes a sculpture. It becomes like a goods and services sort of thing with like
Yeah.
customs and
That's
such. So
very much like my wands and stuff that I send internationally. Once I've finished making them, once I've sealed them, in other words, once they're a solid product and I've done what I've done to them, I'm actually able to send them internationally. However, if I was to send just a stick, it would most likely, 9 times out of 10, be stopped at the border.
Same.
yeah, I think that is true. I think it's got a lot to do with the bacteria and the things that you could be passing, from one ecosystem to the next.
To another. And
Right,
massive things like, because obviously I work with a lot of herbs and stuff like that, skulls are very different. But because I work with plant-based products, I could, if I didn't treat my stuff properly and seal it properly, I could introduce a form of mold rust to an ecosystem that could be absolutely devastating,
right, right.
which is
And so,
why I refuse to send a lot of softwood. I don't send softwoods across the ocean because softwoods are so hard to debacterialize.
right, without destroying them. Yeah. So like that's why we found a whole lot of rotted bones along the way too, ones that were just falling apart, and those ones we wouldn't dare. Not only because they're not stable, obviously, to make a long-standing craft piece
Mm-hmm.
out, but it would pose risks. Really, I think you can't sanitize it properly. You can't see it. So
And going
And
onto your
lately,
art as well now, so you work with a lot of bones, but you also work with clay, from what I read on your Lucky Bones page. Like, care to explain that some more?
that's
All
this
right,
side,
so we're going to move straight over to Soren.
and when the
that's my
shoots
side.
the light here.
I found the knack for sculpting in high school because I was that weird kid that took every available art class possible and took everyone with flying colors. And then
Would you believe me if I told you I failed every single art class I was in?
I
I
was that
got
I was
D's.
just like I had a knack for it. Every sort of art that is put in front of me, I can learn and master in a couple of days.
I was
Um,
very much the same, but I got failed because you're not listening. You're not doing what you're meant to be doing. I'm like,
they
but
just
I
stayed.
am.
My
I'm
art
just doing it
teachers
in my own
stayed with
way.
me. They learned really quickly that if they stopped fighting me, then I would get the art projects done faster.
I was
So
just
this little
very,
guy
very,
right
very
here
bad
is
at not doing what I was meant to be doing. And
okay.
I'd do exactly what I was told to do, but I would do it in a way that the teachers were like, that is not what we were expecting.
What I mainly do too with my art pieces, especially my sculptures, these pieces are meant to empower the area in which they're sitting in.
Yeah.
So this little
So that
guy is,
is he holding an amethyst?
yes, he is. He's holding a huge amethyst, and then within the bowl is a bunch of tiny crystal chips, and then he's holding an air plant
Oh,
that
that
he's
is
also.
beautiful. So we've actually just had a question come through for you guys from BF Photography 87. They wanted to know how you sanitize the bones to be able to work with them.
Excellent question. And we kind of found a hack, more or less. So we
Share
find
the hack.
really, yes, I love beautiful hacks and cheap ones too, because we were homeless and poor,
Oh,
so we had to
yes,
do.
and we will get back to asking questions about that as well.
So what we mainly do is when we find bones, they're really gross usually. I've actually found them with skin
Let,
on
let,
them
let,
still.
let's use this one, for example, because as you
Yeah,
can see inside of it, it's absolutely disgusting. It needs a very good clean. It's got a lot of rust on it. I'm
that
pretty
guy,
sure, yep,
that
if you
that
look in
needs to be
here,
soaked for a couple of days. So you need to soak that in a nice bucket of water for a couple
so
of days.
just straight water.
Just straight water at first. There's like
Yeah.
a couple different processes that you have to
Right, so
do.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to start writing this down actually, so that way I can get the process done. And for the beautiful person who's asked the question, you should start writing this down too. So soak it for a few days in water.
What if it's brittle? So,
I'll get to that. I'll get to that. So soak it a few days in water, and that's just to mainly degrease it. So even if it's
Yep.
been out for a while, it might still have grease within the bone, like where the marrow would sit.
So this
So
skull is about 4.5 years old from the person
okay,
that I got it from.
that
And it
should
has
be
been
okay.
outside for most of that time under the Australian UV, which is actually very, very harsh.
Then I would do 2 days. So, and then the next process you're going to be doing is getting peroxide, oddly enough. Either
Okay.
peroxide, just your basic peroxide, or 50 volume conditioner from a hair salon.
if you can
As
find
in
that.
like literal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a volumizing conditioner you add 2 colors. But what it is, it's a supercharged peroxide. So you get to use less of it and have a lot more of the product left over so you can process more bones.
And
See,
it's
I was not expecting to use just
It's
like
extremely
shampoo and
gentle.
conditioner.
It does not damage the bones at all. It doesn't damage or make them brittle like bleach would, like boiling
So
them
in
would.
theory
so
then, so if thinking about it on a chemical base, because I'm very, very scientifically minded, as you guys would be aware, it's a hydrating, isn't it? So conditioner is hydrating. Care to explain that process to everybody?
so it would swell up a little bit, but it's going to almost swell up into the shape that it would have been before it dehydrated, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So now you're going to be working with it in a faux fresh state, so to speak.
So in
And
other words, it'll be soft. So is that where the brittle question that you were mentioning before comes into play?
right, I wanted to make sure that we were clear. If you soaked it in a solution besides just water first, it might make it too brittle, in our experience, because it kind of, saps all of the, I don't know what it does, but it makes it more chalky if you soak it in something besides just water first and it's already a brittle bone. It kind of just destroys it.
It,
We had a
what
few
I would
attempts with
believe
it.
on a chemical-based level, because conditioners and those sort of things are hydrating, what it would essentially be doing is reducing the calcification of the bones and the marrow. So it would be rehydrating the marrow within the bones and softening the calcium on the exterior of the bone.
Yeah, that's so cool. I
And
didn't
then
know
it
what,
just
I don't know the process. I'm not a scientist. I just know what I've observed.
so
That's so
what it
cool.
does too is while it's hydrating and absorbing and making the bone a little bit softer, it's sinking
Mhm.
in all that cleansing part of the peroxide into the bone. So it's kind of
Which would in
soaked
theory
in
make
the
it
marrow.
white,
Kind of, it
like a
does. It
lot
makes it very,
whiter.
very white.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
Much, much brighter. So we were taking some really aged bones that sometimes and just doing the peroxide soak with them for just a couple days and just the light scrubbing with the toothbrush.
Yep.
For the inside of the skull cavity, just
Yeah.
put a toothbrush on the inside,
And
scrape
what sort
around
of
the bone.
toothbrush would you be using? Because as we all know, toothbrushes come in many different gauges. What would be the recommended? Or would it be easier to actually use paintbrushes?
You can use paintbrush, anything that's got a soft bristle. And if you're using a toothbrush, I'd use one that has like rubber on it. You don't want to be knocking it around too much for sure. Use
Yeah.
pipe cleaners in the really tight cavity, like the nasal holes, the cavities.
And like in here where the horns are.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Pipe cleaners with a little bit of dish soap, after it's had its soak.
So
And
here's a question about dish soap then. So if we've just hydrated, we've just used that all of those elements, would the dish soap in theory being an oil stripper actually make the bones dry out again?
In our
After you
experience,
give them
not
a
too
good
much.
after you give them a good wash and they're dry again, they start to go back to being nice tight white bones again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how long should one let them dry for?
we let them bake in the sun, and until you feel like you can shake it and you're not hearing any water. There's not any
Mhm.
like traces of that. You can't see any leakage anymore. It's really an organic process, and that sounds again quite on the nose, but you're really going to be able to trust your gut when you're working with these things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I didn't think it would be too hard, but at the same time, like I knew there would be a lot of steps and processes behind cleaning it because I know when I work with my woods and that, there is always that big long process of cleaning it, soaking it. I actually use acetone a lot in my work because
Acetone.
acetone is really good at one, not damaging wood too much and stripping all mold, spores, and bacteria off of the exterior of the wood. Would
Uh,
acetone, in theory, work for bones?
I wonder if it
I
would.
don't know. You'd
I'd
have
be
to
willing to
experiment
try
on
it.
that one.
And the best thing about acetone, here's a little hack for you. Nail polish remover. The
Yes,
cheapest form of acetone on the market. And it's what
When
I
I,
use for everything.
oh yeah, when I think of acetone, I think nail polish remover. Just grab that from under your counter. Yeah.
Yep. So would that, in theory, like if you were to try that on some of your bones, how would that actually impact the calcium and the bone structure?
No idea.
Not sure on that one. You'd
I'd be
have to
willing to
you'd
try.
have to do some experiments.
Sure.
I
That's
feel like I
And
would.
report back.
Yeah. That's half the fun is trying to figure out why the things do what they do. There's not too many, journals and articles out there of how to beautifully treat your bones. Everybody's
No,
got
there's
it.
really not. And that's why I find it so fascinating that you guys work with bones because I do work with them. I just do not work with them on a level that you guys do, which is absolutely incredible.
Well, I'm glad to see you trying because I don't
More
know.
people should get into bones.
More people should
They
see.
really should. Now, going back to you, Soren, we're going to go back to some more of your clay products. Do you have some more products that you can grab and show us?
I
Currently, yes.
do.
So
Oh, brilliant. Feel free to care to explain that one. I'm just going to quickly run into the kitchen and grab myself a drink and get my cat off of the roof. He is currently hunting the birds at the moment, and I am very, very, very thirsty. So I do apologize. I should have prepped a little bit better. But care to explain this project and everything that's hanging off of it, the crystals, and how it all works together, like I said before, into a metaphysical approach as well, because that's what a lot of our people are watching this live for.
Well,
So
this
I'm going to
is
give you the space.
because this has a surprise on the inside. This
Oh,
base,
I'm excited, and everyone's going to be excited for that too.
this base actually has a hand collected quartz crystal on the inside. It's a raw quartz crystal and it's very rough, but it's in the base to give it a nice weighted bottom because this is an incense burner. What it's made with is cos clay. It's COS clay, and it is kind of like a wiggly, soft, rubberized clay once you bake it.
which doesn't seem like a huge deal, right? It doesn't look all super impressive, but it quite is. If you work with polymer clay, you know how brittle it is, especially after it's baked, and it's little strands like those would break off with regular polymer clay. This is rubberized, so it's much more durable
So
and flexible.
now, if I have a piece drop, it's far less likely to break. In fact, this one dropped on the side and it did break. However, the breaking point that it broke at, I can glue this piece back on with ease and not have any issues. But it didn't shatter or anything like that.
This
But
one's more of a
it holds
prototype.
the incense stick right here. Hold for it. kind of like its own little Excalibur, only incense style, and then it has a labradorite crystal here, and
Oh,
so
I love Labradorite. I actually have that on my yum. So Labradorite, for all who do not know, is a very strong metaphysical stone. It's used to connect to the higher self. It helps open the third eye and connect all chakra channels straight through to the earth because it incorporates stones from literally the quartz family up until the calcite family. And depending on the type of Labradorite you have, it's also just harvested, correct me if I'm wrong, from the other side of the border in Canada, isn't it? Natural
I'm not sure
resources.
where this one in particular
I'm
came
not
from.
sure. See, you're more of a rock nerd than I am. I'm just entering the rock nerdery family, and I'm loving.
And yeah, and Labradorite is also used extensively by the Inuit tribes of Canada as well, because it's one of their natural found stones, which is why I'm very familiar with the fact that it actually comes from quite literally across the border. And you could very potentially actually find it in your own backyard if you're in the province of Rhode Island.
We probably could.
There's a lot of Rhode Island is very, very mineral rich. There's been veins of amethyst found here. My best friend's with actually the guy who found the first Rhode Island amethyst vein way back when.
We're so small, huh?
We're
so
very, very
That is
small. It's very, very
amazing.
little town. They're like, we found amethyst, and it was the biggest talk of the town, and it still is to this day.
That's incredible. I have very large granite. So where I am, I've got lots of quartz, lots of granite, potentially gold, like lots of things that you'd find near a volcano. Because I actually live in an old volcanic chain region of Australia. Australia, believe it or not, does have volcanoes, and we actually have 3 very large active volcanoes.
I freaking love Australia. That's so cool. I didn't know that.
I can't tell you where they are, but I can tell you right now that where I live right now, that this volcano is very, very, very much dead. But because of the black granite, there's the potentials of finding diamond, ruby, garnet.
I would be hunting for days and days at a time.
And where I live as well is also known as a calcrete area. So I can actually go out and find fossils. Actually, if you bear with me for 1 second, I can quickly run to the car and grab a little fossil that I grabbed yesterday that I'm actually going to be turning into a little crystal.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want, while I go grab that, go grab yourself another art project or talk more about that one because
I have a
it's
couple
fascinating.
of more adult ones, if that's okay with.
Oh, you can absolutely, like, these lives are for anything and everything. Nothing is off limits except for the obvious things like no doing drugs, no smoking, obviously paying attention to Instagram guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to phallic goods, please share them because, as you know, I'm a sexual health nurse and I find it absolutely fascinating when I see things like that.
Well, we've got a yoni pendant.
Oh, what is a yoni pendant, actually? I have not heard of that.
So it's just an altar hanging is what we're calling it. It's a piece that you would put on your altar, especially if you're working with anything in the vein of the, divine feminine, Aphrodite and such. So
Aphrodite, very closely related to the olive tree. So I'm going to go get the fossil and feel free to give everybody a full explanation on how these work.
So this is just meant to bring more empowerment to anybody of the feminine persuasion. It has a couple of Herkimer diamonds here, which are really great at like cleansing the areas in which you dwell the most. And it also has a black onyx here and a little Swarovski crystal in the middle, which doesn't do much in the way of energy, but it looks pretty. So it's there. And it also has a little flower of life grid here that is just meant to bring in magic and spirit science into feminine divine beauty and empowerment. And it's more or less like a little altar talisman. Okay, very nicely.
And I wish that my phone wasn't such crap. I did want to do this on the laptop, but now realizing that my camera's not good enough for some of these projects. That piece is so detailed, and I wish you could see it better. That's
okay. The best thing about not having the best camera is afterwards, everything that you've actually shown on this live might as well upload to your Lucky Bones page.
True that. We
And
have
then
to
that gives you the ability to give everybody a very good insight of what you've been showing us. So does this work in the
Very good
same
insight,
way
Bubba.
as the yoni pendant that you were just talking about? Is this also another version of the yoni pendants?
This is actually good for like a secrets jar, more or less. So this is a lid to a jar,
Yep.
and it's actually a recycled cannabis jar. But this also is embedded with crystals and mushrooms, and I do kind of a light and a dark to these pendants, really. So
Oh,
the
feel
male
free to
is
explain that.
very masculine, deep colors, as well as the mushrooms, which is symbolizing decay and growth in that way. And then the feminine form is very light and pretty and golden and meant to bring forth life. So there's kind of a duality
Yeah.
going.
Well, there's always the duality because I do work very, very strongly with the masculine and the feminine. Everything that I do is all about that symbiotic relationship between the masculine and the feminine. Because without one, you cannot have the other.
Exactly. You have to respect them both.
You have to respect them both. And you know what? That's actually a perfect question for you as you identify as non-binary. Where do you draw that line?
So, well, that's kind of
You have more of a line than me. I flow in and out of feminine and masculine with the ease. It's just a part of who I am. It comes through in my artwork. It comes through in my personality. It's just a constant flow for me. It's back and forth.
It's true. You're way more to like either end of the spectrum on.
So would that be right in me saying you'd be androgenically fluidic?
For sure. There's definitely more than a few words to describe non-binariness in my experience, and transness for that matter. Like I either go by non-binary or agender, which means that I really don't respond to or understand or vibe with any particular gender, especially hard male or hard female. It just doesn't make sense to me. But I recognize that I possess physically and spiritually a masculine and a feminine side, and that it does fluctuate on a day-to-day basis, and how I perceive the world in every way, and how the world perceives me. So
that is beautiful. I love that understanding of it. So going to the fossils that I grabbed from the car. So this is a very, very, very common fossil of where I live.
Yes.
So this, you might be able to help me identify it, but correct me if I'm wrong. That's a form of ancient abalone.
I can't, unfortunately, Mike, I can't see it as well as I would love to find out. What is it? Abalone? So that's a shell, right?
It's a shell, yes.
And you found that, is there any water around where you are?
So I live on what's known as calcrete. So what calcrete is limestone shelves, and this used to be the ocean floor.
Right.
I live on the old ancient ocean floor bed.
Right. Right.
So these are so common. I can find ammonites. I can find so many different types of fossils because it takes the notes actually. I live in an area that's called, so we have this region that's called Shell Hill, and there are so many different types of these fossilized shells. But unfortunately, the area was extensively farmed for fertilizer. Because as we know, ancient floor beds, ancient shells make amazing fertilizer compositions. And because of that, a lot of it was extensively farmed out and completely decimated for the sake of farmers. Now it's protected, so it's never going to be destroyed again. So what is remaining is lots of these types of fossils. So a lot of the big ammonites and stuff like that, unfortunately, were destroyed. And even the potential of ancient dinosaur bones were destroyed too.
That's such a shame.
But you have all that opal.
Pardon?
But you have all that opal over there in Australia.
Yes, we have so much opal here in Australia. And you know what? That's actually probably something I could even find in my local area too, being the fact that it's an old ocean bed and an old volcanic region.
Right. Go find you some
dreams are made
water.
of.
It's the coolest thing I've ever heard
And
of.
so I forgot that this was actually in my car as well, but Karawong,
Ooh, is that real now?
That's
that is
cool.
definitely real. So
Oh,
this here is a Karawong, and they are native to Australia. You won't find them where you live. And we actually call them the mobsters of the bird world. Well, I very affectionately call them the mobsters of the bird world. And the funny thing about them is they literally act like gangs. They literally act like your typical American gang. They will literally go out, they will scour the regions, they will actively push other Karawong tribes flocks out. And then when the Karawongs are breeding, they will actually go in and steal baby birds and pull them into their flock and be like, you are now part of our family. And then the other mobs and other flocks will go do the exact same thing to them. And there's constant gang wars going on all the time.
just bullies.
They bully everything and every bird, every Karawong. They are just gangsters, quite literally mobsters.
What what's the predator that you have to worry about most where you are?
Dogs.
Like it's the dog. Yeah.
It's the dog.
Tell, tell us more about the dogs. Like did they so I want to know like about the bone if you have a lot of bones lying around over there and like what you can end up finding there with so many predators because we don't have all that many here compared.
So I don't actually come across many bones at all, to be completely honest. To be
Yeah.
completely honest, most Australian wildlife, here's a great example. Wombats, believe it or not, are actually omnivorous, carnivorous, and herbivorous. And if a wombat is hit on the side of the road and they're within a close proximity of their burrow, they will actually roll their deceased friends, bury them alive, and slowly eat them because a wombat is actually part of the rodent family, just like the kangaroo, because
Yeah.
of their teeth structure like that. Kangaroos are also omnivorous too. They're not herbivorous. They actually eat a lot of insects and stuff like that. They're the main bones I will find are kangaroos, and that's pretty much predominantly it. I have a kangaroo femur out in my backyard at the moment, which my dog is currently munging on. Not right now. He's brought himself a tennis ball. But we don't actually find many bones out here because the UV of Australia can disintegrate it so quickly. Just think of Texas, for example, and how quick the degradation of bones in the Texas environment happens, and how predators will come in and take the bones and pretty much just crunch them to absolutely nothing. That's
Right.
how it works here in Australia. We don't find many bones because the dogs or the wild cats or the foxes, which are our main predators, is the fox, the cat, and the dog,
Right.
will just take the bones, take them to their burrows or take them to their dens, and well, it's very hard to find them. So when I come across a bone, it's like, oh my God, a bone. I actually found something.
Ah, wow. I never knew
Pretty
that.
much how it is here back in New England, where it's finding bones is few and far between
You
because
can't find them at all
the moss
here.
covers the bones that fall on the
Right.
ground
We've got
very quickly.
100% happens out here too. So this here, if I actually leave it in the sun and then it gets wet, it goes green because
yep.
it's been outside for so long. So this here actually has active mold spores, which is why I asked about the acetone treatment to see if that would actually be effective in removing the mold out of this like I would with my wood.
Why not give it a try? I think it's gentle enough that you could experiment with it, and do a small patch, like they say.
I
And
feel like I should, and you know what? I'll definitely relay that back to you. Now, I have another question for you. You guys have traveled across the country with your animals. How has that affected and impacted you? I also do want to let you know that we're almost at an hour, so I'll have to go back and redo the live so that we can go to a part two. But start talking about like how is it living with pets on the road, and are they with you at the moment?
they are. They're both sleeping
They're
somewhere.
both sleeping. Today's
Well,
Ruby's birthday, actually.
yeah, today's our Shiba Inu's second birthday,
Ooh.
She's
so
2 years
if
old
we
today.
can find her.
And
Let's take a look at
any ideas or anything that you've got planned for her today?
I made her
No.
her very own pup day cake.
Oh, that is adorable.
Look at
So
that
she
little
got a
dingo.
she got a pup day cake that was made with peanut butter, carrots, honey, yogurt.
Yeah. They're
I
really
always thought that honey wasn't good for dogs, being a naturally high source of sugar.
a little
It's
bit
good
of
in moderation.
birthday cake. Never again. I mean,
Yeah,
except
yeah.
for
It's
birthday.
definitely a special occasion type deal.
Yeah.
And it's mostly just to sweeten the thing because I do use pumpkin as well. So
Oh, you know what? They actually sound really nice for us to eat too.
it was tasty. It was tasty. I tend to try things that I bake for my dogs because, well, if they're gonna be eating it, I might as well try it. Make sure
Well,
it's actually good.
I made Diesel, my boy, a pancake last night too. So if you guys have seen my pancakes online, they're so thick and juicy. They're so good. Everyone loves them, even my dog. But what I actually do is I make a
Anyway,
bread
no.
cake.
Right. You asked how are they on the road? So they're
Dirty.
Yeah.
dirty. I mean, we're all dirty. Like, there's no getting around that. But
No. There's no getting around that. And how did it impact finding houses as well was the other question.
That's honestly.
It made it very hard to find houses because in Rhode Island they just tend to kind of discriminate against anybody who has pets here.
Yeah, it actually, if you really wanted to break it down, that is what sent us on the road in the first place. So.
Yep. So so breaking it down like that then, so was being on the road with the pets and having to choose where you're living forced upon you because of them? And is that why you chose to do it?
In a way, it had a lot to do with our
because
decision.
we were told to just get rid of them and to just give them up because we weren't going to have the right home for them, and that was just something that was absolutely out of the question for us.
We couldn't conceive.
It is out of the question. Like, as a gypsy, I'm sorry, but when you hit the road, you give the dog their best life actually possible because there is no such thing as a fence anymore.
No, they had the best lives, and they miss it all the time. They don't actually like
now that we live in a
inside
house, they're like, what the fuck do we do with ourselves?
They're bored as
like,
hell.
I
They
don't
hate it.
understand what's going on. What is this
They
place?
probably do what my boy does, and the minute you go and grab the car keys, they're like, "Yeah, road trip."
Yeah, they do, and it kills us a little bit because we're like, no, now we have to try to live a normal life again because my health isn't so great. So if it weren't for my health, we'd probably still be on the road. But that's
Well,
another story.
let's talk about that. So what I'm going to do then is, so we're going to go straight to your health and why it stopped you from staying on the road. But I'm going to end the live here, and then we're going to go into part 2. So bear with us, everybody that's watching right now. We're about to reset this live, and then we're going to go into our second lot of questionnaires, and we're going to start with your health issues. And if you've got any health issues, Soren, is that another reason too as to why?
No, not really. Mainly
All right,
the
well then,
reasons for the pets because
yeah, easy. So
my
with
health
that, I'm
is-
going to end the live, and then we'll get back into answering that question in 1 second.